Think you know what divorce means for your family, finances, and future? Think again. We are busting myths that could cost you emotionally, financially, and legally if you're not careful. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, I thought today we've been discussing some really in-depth topics recently, but I do think it's important to run through the basic myths that we hear all the time. So if anybody is finding us for the first time or even needs a little bit of a reminder who's been listening to us for a while, there are some myths that are floating around out there that Mum wants to squish, and so do I. And one of them, Mum and I had a bit of an argument about. So see if you can pick up which one that's going to be.
We never argued. That was just a full and frank exchange of views.
That is correct. It's correct, Mother. We are very mature about our disagreements. But first, let's get to the jingle and then let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Just a reminder, everyone, that Mum is not your lawyer and I'm not a lawyer or a psychologist. So the information that we're providing today is based on Australian law, and we are also not providing legal advice. So please get your own independent legal advice before making any decisions or moving forwards.
Education only.
Okay, so myth number 1, and we do hear this a lot, is that you have to wait until you're actually divorced to do property settlement.
We do hear that a lot. And the answer to that is you do not. You can start property settlement the minute you're separated, even if it's under one roof. And you don't have to wait for the divorce, which is just the unmarrying hearing. It's not to do with property settlement. It's not to do with kids. So please, if you're sitting there hoping, waiting for that year, you don't have to.
Because we did hear from someone in one of our webinars saying, I'd really like to get divorced, but I can't get my ex to sign the divorce papers. I really need them to sign the divorce papers because I really want to get property settlement. And so Mum's here to tell you, if you're in Australia, you don't need them to sign the divorce papers to get divorced. And you also don't need to get divorced to get your property settlement.
That's right. That's 2 myths, isn't it? Because you hear it in the movies, such and such won't give me a divorce. Well, in Australia, we don't get people giving it. We take a divorce. So you can do your own divorce.
Let's get into myth number 2. The court always favours mums.
Yes, they don't.
So some people think that parenting arrangements, it's automatically default to the mother. And some men just assume that straight away. And that could be detrimental to your case if you just don't even bother trying because somewhere someone's told you that women or mothers always win custody. So does the court take into consideration gender at all?
I don't think they do per se, but I think society does. I think if any, you still have stay-at-home dads are a minority of the stay-at-home parents. It's mostly stay-at-home mums. And so I think that the court takes the couple and the arrangements as they find them, and most often people have put those gender divisions in their own lives, probably simply because of the need for pregnancy and maternity leave. So I don't think so. I think that a child if you've got a woman who's gatekeeping the kids from their dad, those children in later life will probably say what the kids they surveyed in their 20s said, and they said they felt like they were abused twice, once by the parent who wouldn't let them see their father or mother, and the other time by the person who gave up trying to see them.
Yeah. So don't assume that your outcome of your case or parenting custody issues are going to be determined by what somebody else has experienced, even though there's a lot of gender stereotyping and discussion about it all. And there's a lot of comments on social media saying men always X or women always X. That does not mean that's going to happen for you because each case is taken on by a case-by-case basis with all the facts considered based on the legislation.
Spot on.
Okay. Next myth is being bamboozled into thinking that the other person owns everything and you're going to get nothing.
Yes. So you see this most often in coercive control relationships where the controlling person kind of brainwashes the other person into thinking they've got no rights and no ownership. And do you know how they do it? They do it by just saying it, by assuming it, by acting as though it's theirs, all theirs. And it's easy for you to get bamboozled with all of that. They might even say, oh, look, I've been to see a lawyer and you don't get any of that, all of that. So that's a big mistake, a big myth. You need to get your own information. And so that myth about it's all theirs, therefore you can't get anything, can be looked at by someone professionally and give you advice, because there's very few things that don't become available for division between the parties.
And look, it's really hard. I don't know if you've listened to our emotional abuse episode, Is It Emotional Abuse? But as Coercive said, the psychologist, sometimes if you've been in an emotionally abusive relationship, they take your autonomy for thinking, your understanding, identity. And so you second guess or question everything that you think. And you take everything they say, if they've distorted your reality, as gospel or as the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that used to set my ears tingling in practice was when someone would come in and go, oh, my ex is so smart. You don't realize they are so smart. And that's usually unlikely that you formed that view of your ex. It's likely that you've been bullied into it. And I think what Coercive said, she called it perspecticide. And I think she was quoting someone from the States. But what a good idea. What a good concept that your perspective has been killed. And so you don't buy into their arguments or what they say. And if you're early out of a coercive control, don't trust your own judgment.
Get somebody else involved to help you. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, another myth, Mum. Equalizing super is the right thing to do. Now, we have done a whole episode on this.
Yes.
I don't know if it's out yet, but it talks about the problems of equalizing super.
Yep.
Can you quickly give us a little rundown?
Equalizing super, and we should put in there, without a proper adjustment of the other assets to reflect the proper division, is a mistake. It's a myth. I know it's being mentioned a lot by people I'm talking to, saying, oh, we're equalizing the super, and any layperson go, oh, yeah, that seems fair. But it's not. It's not just on contributions. It's got to be for your future needs. You have to have an adjustment enough of super and property, because super is property. So super and non-super property to see you forward. And if the other person's got a much higher income, giving them exactly the same amount of super with no other adjustment to you means that in 10 years, they're going to be romping ahead of you again.
Okay, good. Keep that one in front of your mind, because no one really likes to think about super.
No.
Myths, Mother.
Say that again, sorry.
Myth 6. Myth 6. Number 6.
Number 6.
Dating after separation will hurt my case.
Yeah, no, unless you've got children and the person you're dating is completely inappropriate. I've seen that. But if you've got a genuine relationship and you are careful about introduction to the children, it shouldn't damage your case at all. And probably it shows the court that you have moved on and you are not in that place where you're vindictive and hating the other person. You just want to get out of it as economically and as quickly as you can.
Okay. That's a good one, because I do know some people who are waiting till their divorce is final, which is fine. That's your decision.
Yeah.
But if it takes 6 or 7 years, you need to focus on moving forward with your own life at the same time. You don't want to just completely be sucked into this divorce side journey and not live your life at the same time. And I did get an email from someone recently writing to me and saying, I am moving on with my life and I'm trying to focus on other things. And I was so proud of them. And that was a lovely message. So thank you for sending that through as a message.
And it makes it easier to settle things, Laura. It makes it easier. You go, look, I've got a future and I'm looking forward to my new life. I heard an expression today. I was listening to a family report on cases and things from a very senior lawyer in Melbourne, and she said, the courts they have always preferred looking through the windscreen than looking in the rearview mirror about things. And I think she said it in relation to children and the behaviour with children, but she's right. I mean, we do have to look forward. We have to explain, narrate our past, deal with it, move on.
In saying that, we actually have a survey available for anybody who's listening today who might want to let us know how they're going with that. We partnered with a lovely lady who is trying to create a course to help people on dating after separation. If you want to check out the survey, we'll put the link down below. Once we hit 500 survey numbers, we're choosing one lucky person to actually have a free chat with Mum. The address is https:// www.surveymonkey.com/r/dating-post40. If you're interested in doing that survey, if you are thinking about dating or have started to, even if you haven't started but are thinking about it, go and do that survey. Send us an email. Let us know that you've done it and you'll go into the draw.
Yes, right.
Myth number 7. You have to go to court to settle your divorce.
Yes. Well, first of all, the word divorce really should just relate to getting the marriage undone. But a lot of people use it for children and property. And I guess that's what we're talking about. You can only get divorced by sending things to court. But with your property and your kids' matters, you can do things by consent or parenting plan or financial agreement. And the consent is the only one of those 3 that gets sent to the court. You don't have to usually attend. A registrar does it. So you don't have to go to court to get your property settlement. And you know what? If you have had to start in court, and some people have to just to move the other person along, it doesn't mean you will end up in a trial because you always have that chance to settle on the way along.
I saw a statistic. It was 3% of people who get divorced end up going to court for final trial. So that's good news for everyone. And mediation, guys, mediation is another way. And arbitration. I know Mum always says it, but I'm going to say it today.
I know, you beat me. Yeah.
Arbitration is another option. If you'd like to learn more about that, go and listen to some of our other episodes. But these are ways that you can get divorced and sort out your property and kids stuff without having to go to court.
And another thing you can do is work out what it is that you do agree on and perhaps get that in writing, not in an order necessarily, tuck that away and just narrow the issues. Get to the whatever the last thing is. And if it's just one thing that you can't agree on, you could probably have a trial on that, or you can send that to an arbitrator or go to mediation.
Brilliant. Okay. Myth number 8 and 9 are similar, but myth number 8, if I leave the house, I'll lose it.
No.
So we hear a lot of people who stay separated together under one roof, refusing to leave and driving each other batty.
Yeah. So
because they think they'll lose their house.
I reckon that old saying, I don't know if you've heard of it, that possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah.
It's absolute rubbish, especially in family law. So no, you can leave, and that doesn't mean you won't get a share of the house. You can leave, and if you want to return to the house, I was just looking at a case this morning where they were able to go back to the house, even though the husband, as it was there, had been in the house for quite some time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So don't feel like you have to bags it and keep your hand on it. You've seen those competitions where whoever leaves their hand the longest gets to keep it and they stay there. Yeah. You don't
No.
Myth number 9, which is similar. If I leave, I lose access to my kids.
Yeah. So sometimes if you leave without the children, that might be a situation. You need to remedy it pretty quickly. Talk about it straight away, get them into mediation straight away so that you've got something put in place. Because the way that family law is now in relation to children is status quo. I mean, what's been happening immediately before any trial or any judgment is bearing a lot of weight with the courts. So they're looking at, they haven't got time on an interim hearing to find out who's lying, who's putting pressure on who, who's the baddie. All they can do is say, look, as far as the kids are going, where are they now? Have they been all right? Going to school? Not sick. I think safest thing is to leave them there until we get to a trial. So it's a myth, but it's not. So be vigorous in getting your time with the children. And if all you get offered, I can't stress this enough, if all that you get offered is supervised time with a child, grab it with both hands and go as often as you can because you need to keep that connection.
So can we maybe change that it's not a myth and that if you leave, you might lose access to your kids if you've got a manipulative and controlling ex? Because I guess if it's amicable, of course the court's going to sort it out, but I guess you've got to be careful because some people go off the rails and disappear for a while. And then, like you just said, Mum, it's the status quo. If you go to court, you've got to wait at least a year to get to a trial. And then they probably have been with you for a year.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping, the court's hoping for a year, but there will be interim hearings where the court may remedy that and allow some time. And if they can't work out who's fibbing, you may find yourself having supervised time. That's why I say if the only time you've been offered is supervised time, you'd be a mug not to take it. It doesn't mean you're admitting anything. It's just about the kids. It's just keeping that. And if you've been going and having time in the contact centre with the children, by the time it comes to court, on an interim basis even, that option's been dealt with. There'll be a report from the contact centre, and it's unlikely then that the court would be too worried about then turning it into occasional overnights. I think that a person who refuses to go to a contact centre on principle is demonstrating to everybody else that the kids aren't their priority.
Yes. But it is important to note that parenting rights don't disappear just because you've left the house.
Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today.
And neither does a child's love for you appear just because you've left the house, but a lot of people manage to negotiate something straight away, usually immediately or just as you go, get that sorted. And if you've got to see them at your mum's place or whatever, just do whatever so you can get them.
Okay. All right. Go and get legal advice about that. Be very careful. Start as you mean to go on, as Mum always says.
Yeah.
Okay. Myth number 10. Not getting legal advice saves money.
Well, I suppose it does in the short term. You don't have to pay those few $100s or whatever it is to the lawyer. But wouldn't you feel like a mug if you missed out on thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands because you didn't go and get your own legal advice? Because, and you see it so often, let's not get the lawyers involved, says the person who's probably already been to a lawyer.
Yes. And I think it's important that going to see a lawyer does not mean you're going to go to court. And whilst we have a DIY do-it-yourself course, which is great, we still always recommend you go and see a lawyer to find out where you stand and before you sign anything. Yeah. And if you can make big mistakes if you don't go see a lawyer, and then it's going to cost you more to undo it.
That's right. And if you're listening to Kathy from the lunchroom or, Bob at work, where they've gone through their things, every case is different. Otherwise, we'd be able to just punch in the details and pull the lever and you'd get your answer. Every case is different. But yes, I think that not getting any legal advice usually means you're the only one who has it, because the person who says let's not has already seen a lawyer and doesn't want you to know. And these days, with personal mobile phones and personal emails, you could say to the lawyer, don't contact me again. I want to pay when I come.
Yeah.
I don't want anything from you. Or you can, if you're confident your email's not being hacked, you may be communicate by email and you may be able to get text message on your phone or whatever. But most lawyers understand no strings attached. Tell them it's a delicate situation. You're in the very, very early stages and you don't want them to do anything. You just want that one-off appointment to see where you stand. And if they want like a long relationship and thousands in trust, take some time to think about that. Yeah, they might suit you, but they might not. So you're there checking them out to see if they're good for you. And you may even talk to a couple of lawyers. And certainly from my point of view, I was always assessing whether the client was someone that I could work with or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Myth 11. Wow, we've got to 11. We're only halfway through the episode. Property settlements are always 50-50 if it's fair.
No. And we talked about that before with wages. If someone's got a really high capacity to earn, okay, and maybe they're getting something coming in the future, like a personal injuries claim that's going to go through, and you've got a really low income and you'll be mostly minding the kids. To a kindergarten, half an apple each is fair. Like preschool kinder kids, they learn about sharing and fair. But the court has to also look into the future, at your future needs. And so if what the court asks itself is, if we make orders like this, how are these parties going to be 10 years down the track, 15 years down the track? And you will see that the person who's got the most money is doing better. The person who's sick, usually having to take days off work, is doing worse and worse and worse. And so the court looks at all of those issues as well. So even if you've got someone saying to you, don't be that person, don't be the one that takes me for everything I've got, don't take half, I've worked hard, yada, yada, yada. I mean, the person who stays home also works hard. And I saw a wonderful list in a case the other day, or this morning actually, where in an affidavit, they'd put all of the things they did in a day, and it was so many things, so many little things.
Do you want me to read them out, Mum?
Yeah.
I'll read them out. You sent it to me. Okay. So these are the things they put in their case of all the things that they do. On an average week, I would do the following: all the cooking for myself and the husband, all the shopping for myself and the husband, all the cleaning of the house, all the washing of the dishes, all the washing of the clothes for myself and the husband, all the ironing of the clothes for myself and my husband, the majority of the gardening, the majority of the feeding of the dogs, the majority of washing the dogs, managing our finances and paying our bills. And then it goes on to talk about cleaning, etc. So even that, and that swayed.
It did. It was really, so that's in Baxter and Baxter, a 2010 case. And that was a case about the court looking at the parenting contribution a person makes, because sometimes the person who brought in the cash, which is another of my bugbears, where they give you their pay slips over the years and go, clearly this person made the greater financial contribution, maybe, but look at you, look what you've done on a day in, day out basis. So yes, so those things are very relevant, and it did sway the court. In fact, that although the primary judge, the trial judge, didn't give it proper weight, he pretty well ignored it, the full court saw fit to actually repeat that part of her affidavit in full and say that she deserved a bigger share of property because of the contribution that she'd made, as well as the future needs. So I think we will do an episode soon about how to present your cases in court, but I think that would be something you would never, ever see in a stock precedent affidavit. You have to make it live for the judge. And that really resonated with me, how much work there is in just keeping a place running.
I think someone somewhere did a thing where they looked up how much it would cost to hire a cleaner, to hire a laundress, to hire a cook, to hire all these people to do all this sort of stuff. And whoever's at home doing that should be counted, because man or woman, it's a job that you're doing every day pretty much.
Yeah.
Let's get on to the next one. Yep, number 12. Child support covers all child expenses.
Oh, no, it doesn't. No. And that is because both of you have to contribute to the child, right? And when the court does the calculation, if the person who isn't living with the child most has to pay the other person child support, it's simply because when you balance up the number of days they have, their amount of income and so forth, then they have to pay for that percentage of care. It may be that they need to still give you some to reach that right amount. And it's not meant to cover all expenses like the actual child support amount, because you are paying electricity and internet and housing and petrol for these kids, and and that's your contribution, okay? That's your contribution to the kid. But sometimes I think people forget that if there are special needs or special medical things, or the children are at a private school, and that was intended by both of you, perhaps you were enrolled the child was enrolled when they were still together, those are things that can be taken into account for child support to get a bigger share from the other person. But no, child support is not the whole, it's not the whole thing.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And this is the one we had a little disagreement about.
Okay.
Your lawyer knows everything, and it's too hard for you to learn it yourself. So let's talk about your lawyer knows everything. And to be fair, I believed this myth, and I loved my lawyers, and I know they knew a lot, but I now know I'm not saying my lawyers didn't know it all, but I've heard so many people on our member chats or in emails where their lawyers are telling them stuff that even I know, that I'm like, what? How are they telling you that? Whoa. That's insane. Like you just said, where they sent pay slips of everything for their entire marriage and said, look at all this money I've brought in.
Yeah.
So the misunderstandings that lawyers can have is true. Lawyers don't know everything.
No, and no lawyer knows everything. There's a lot to know. But also, they don't know your whole story. And if you don't know what is and isn't relevant, you might not be able to give that information to your lawyer, and that changes everything. Okay? So lawyers don't necessarily know everything. Here's a tip. Sometimes lawyers on two sides of the fence, acting for different parties, have quite a strong disagreement on the way that the court will go. And it doesn't happen often because we all have had lots of experience with the judges, and if you ask two lawyers the same question, they should be within about 10% of each other. But if one side is adamant about one thing and your lawyer's adamant that it's against it, get your lawyer to tell you in writing with cases why the other side's wrong and why you shouldn't give in, because sometimes you'll find they can't justify it. If they can justify it, then you know that they can destroy the other side, and then say to them, how about you send those cases over to them? And then you're not just writing to your ex's lawyer, you're writing to them, your ex, who will read it, and you can talk about costs. You can have a section 117C which talks about costs, and that should make your ex, when he gets it from his lawyer, be a bit thoughtful about maybe they're right and maybe I'm not. So get them to tell you in writing, and if they can prove it, then get them to tell the other side. Because sometimes it's just the vibes that they seem to go on, And I do remember a young employed solicitor once who had completely the wrong idea about an element. And when I said her to, well, go and have a look at this, go and give me your justification, there was none.
So look, and I don't blame lawyers for not knowing everything, that's for sure. And look, I have come across beautiful, lovely, caring lawyers, but I have also come across some that are not so caring.
Yeah.
So you need to be mindful of who you're choosing as your lawyer, educating yourself, not sitting back and just hoping for the best. You've got to really get involved. And I know that these myths, we're being a bit flippant about it, but when no one educates you on divorce, you don't learn it in school, you don't learn it at uni, you only learn about it when you're going through it or when a friend goes through it. So you really don't know.
No.
And so there are a lot of myths out there, and you just need to be making sure that you're making decisions, educated decisions based on facts and the truth, and not myths or Aunt Susie's experience going through court.
Yeah. And, lawyers don't know everything. We were told this when we were at law school.
You knew everything.
No, we don't know everything, but we know where to look it up. We know where to look it up. And so, that sometimes your lawyer's memory may need a little tweak or a little reality check, because in a busy day, the lawyers are writing to lots of people involved in lots of cases. And the way to get them to focus on yours for 5 minutes is request something in writing. Because if they're going to put it in writing, they will, with cases, they'll have to do the research, and, that will comfort you that if you know that they're on the right track, and it's cheap at half the price to get a letter like that. If not, maybe talk about getting a barrister's opinion to see, because they'll pull no punches. The trouble with solicitors sometimes, and I feel like I'm betraying the profession, but look, it's true. If they tell a person something and then it turns out to be wrong, okay, if they've gone off the cuff, I'll get everything. I've heard of people like that. Oh, they'll be scared when they know it's me. I know a bloke who does that. But if they've started like that, it's really hard for them then to say, oh, actually, that's not what you're going to get. And so they sometimes won't tell you and keep punching on. And a lot of the conversations I have with people are about reducing their expectation, because it's some things that seem so like they really should be true and common sense, and from your perspective, it's absolutely should be basic, actually isn't true. And so if someone says to you, well, yeah, I hear you, mate, but no, you can't, no, that won't help you. And at least they can let go gracefully without being told at the end of a trial that they're wrong and being hit with costs from the other side. Because one thing the court is doing a lot more is awarding costs against a person who unreasonably did not accept an offer. And I've read 2 cases in the last 2 weeks where they've done that. So they're really trying to make people put their money where their mouth is, really.
Right. So I guess when it comes to choosing your lawyer, that really is going to matter.
It is.
Reading reviews and making sure that they align with your values. And if your lawyer isn't giving you some home truths or has never told you something, you don't ask yourself why.
Well, you might be a saint, but
yeah,
or you might be educated already, but you need to. It's better off to know that you're trying to punch a dead argument.
Yeah. Well, Mum, thank you for going through that many myths with us.
Okay.
I hope that this has been a quick little run and helpful for anybody. We have a lot of videos that go into depth into all of these topics.
Mm-hmm.
If you are interested, you can go and find us and you can just search. Actually, we have a little database on our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au. You can go to the podcast section and you can go and search for the thing that you're facing, and it'll bring up all the podcasts on that. And you can go and listen to all of them. But there are many that will help you. They've helped lots. Nearly 1 million people download. So it's helped a lot of people.
Amazing.
So use it to help. And thank you, Mum, for doing this episode. I know it felt a little bit not in depth, but I do think sometimes for anyone facing divorce, especially at the start, just having a little bit of a run through the myths is always a good help.
Yes, you're right, Rose. You're absolutely correct.
All right. Oh, I'm always right. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you all next week. And don't forget, if you want to enter the competition to have a chat with Mum, go and do that survey. I'll put a link below. Thanks, Mum.
Thank you, Rosie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.